This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
So it comes to the point, I guess, once you get into this modelling stuff and you dip your toe in the water, that inevitably you might end up on a forum or something like that, and you'll be asked, and you may even be asking these questions, who makes the best modeler? You can find comparisons and all that sort of stuff on YouTube, and you may find people that have a strong opinion on this stuff, and you may find people that say they all sound the same. Probably, I think the fairest position is that pretty much all of the good modelers, you can definitely do a good enough job to gig with, and I guess that's kind of your bare minimum standard. Now the Quad Cortex at the moment is just teetering on the edge. Hopefully they bring out their hybrid mode soon, but at the moment you can't have, you know, a mode where you can have scenes as well as sort of switching out just pedals as well. So at the moment it's a little bit limited on the gigging front, I would suggest. However, I think a lot of people are really pleased with the tones and are really pleased with the capturing. However, I think there is still one manufacturer, one company that does still have quite a considerable edge in the market, and obviously it's Fractal, right? Now they brought out this year, was it last year? I don't know, which year was it? The Fractal FM9, which is essentially unobtainium for a lot of people for a number of reasons. So first of all, there was a long wait list. Second of all, it's quite expensive. So in the UK, I think it's around about £2,000. But the thing is, if we take kind of cost out of the equation, there's a whole bunch of reasons to choose Fractal over pretty much any other modeler, I think. There's one reason maybe that you wouldn't, and that might be ease of use. So if you're just thinking, right, I really want to dip my toe in the water of modeling and I just want good tones straight away, and if you're building your own presets, I think maybe the Fractal stuff, there is a learning curve with it, which is, I think, steeper than with the Quad Cortex or steeper with the Line 6 Helix. However, all of the Fractal devices also have really good factory presets which could make great starting points, and I think there are people out there, let me know if you're one of these, who have maybe even got to the stage where they can gig the thing just using factory presets. I do think people get a considerable amount of use out of them. I think it's a fairly bold claim to say for sure that Fractal are making the best modeler, but I think there are things that they do that are potentially better than anyone else on the market at the moment. I think aside from the atomic amplifier, the Fractal oversampling 8 times, I think is the highest on the market. Now, what that should in theory mean is that if you're using higher gain tones, you get less aliasing versus something like a Quad Cortex, which will be considerably lower. I don't know exactly what they oversample at the moment, but anyway, that's a thing which a lot of us don't really hear anyway. Number of amp models, it's like 300, is considerably more in the Fractal than in any of the other devices put together. Now, if you're looking for a bunch of AC30 tones, if you're looking for a train wreck, if you're looking for a few options for Dumble, if you're looking for 2 rocks, if you're looking for Cameron amps, if you're looking for loads of Marshalls, if you're looking for loads of Fenders, there's nowhere else to go really than Fractal. Fractal is the one that has it all, as well as having an incredible bank of kind of effects. Now, I think it's fair to say again that it's not necessarily super obvious how some of these effects work, but you do sort of learn as you go with Fractal stuff as well. I find, you know, if you think about more complicated kind of plugins for delay or this sort of thing, the sort of functionality that you get in expensive kind of delay plugins is what you've got built into the Fractal. It's just in a menu system. But you have to kind of get on board with this idea of being involved with the menu system before you really get the most out of a Fractal unit, I think. So you can build, for instance, incredible diffuse delays and reverbs and freeze bits of them and all this sort of stuff that you can. This is what the Fractal name is all about, like really getting deeper and deeper into what a unit can do. You can change diodes on a tube screamer if you want to, because these things are modeled at a component level. If you really want to get into the nitty gritty with this stuff, Fractal would be the way to go. If you really want quick results straight away and you aren't necessarily interested in tweaking too much, then maybe Fractal might not be the best bet. And if you're looking for a cheaper option, again, I think maybe Fractal might not be the best bet. For me, I really like Line 6 stuff, and that's what I use day in, day out, because I find that user interface works really well for me. But I can see a universe where if I just used Fractal day in, day out, I'm sure I would totally get used to using that as well. It just happens to be that Line 6 is where I've put a load of my energy in terms of learning how a thing works. It's got to the stage where for me, I feel like I know the Helix really well. I can gig it, pretty comfortable that I know what I'm doing with that. I still get a bit of an overwhelming feeling with Fractal, like there's so much that you could do in there. In some ways it's like, well, where do I start? Where I started with this preset, just a deluxe reverb and 2 IRs, so both from the VibReverb cabinet, one with a ribbon mic and one with a 57. And then I was using the Aurora multi-tap, is that how you say it? Aurora? Which is based on the Andy Timmons kind of halo effect. It's a multi-tap delay into a spring reverb. And then I got a tremolo splitting off after the cab, but away from on a separate line to the delay, so that there's kind of this clean, like wet dry thing, which is kind of tremolo panning, really quite cool. And then also using an exotic RC boost at the start. And, you know, sounds really good, even if you're building this simple stuff. So I think simple in Fractal can sound really good as well, obviously. But I think once you start thinking, right, well, is this possible? In a lot of other modelers, lots of things aren't necessarily possible. In Fractal, most things are. Particularly if you go for the Axe-Fx 3, you can do their version of essentially kind of capturing. It takes a little bit longer and it's a different kind of context, but there's so much stuff within Fractal that they've already got such a huge head start. If you're interested in variety of tones, variety of effects, as well as being able to manipulate those existing effects as much as possible, there really, I don't think, is a better choice than Fractal. So in a few areas, I'd say probably Fractal does represent, I think, the best modeler that you can buy today, except for usability maybe, and maybe quickness of results. Aside from that, you really do get quite a lot for your money and more bang for buck, you know, per algorithm included in there. Like, this is the thing that takes a lot of time with modelers, is actually programming the algorithms that do represent, you know, a Fender twin reverb or an Ibanez tube screamer, you know, and the sheer quantity that you've got in here, it's obvious that this is the unit that has had most attention paid towards it and has the most algorithms in it. I don't know if that's interesting to you or not. If you want this preset, use the Gumroad link. I was using TimZenButt for the lead tone, and then DverbHalo for that intro tone. So we're using the deluxe reverb and then the kind of halo effect. I think, especially if you're thinking about multi-effects sort of stuff and something that could maybe be part of a fly rig, I'm surprised I don't see more people talking about the FM3 and using it in some ways, is it's kind of a no-brainer for a lot of different contexts. Of course, you've got big users like Steve Vai and people like that, and The Edge using it for effects, but I think, yeah, definitely a cool unit, and probably the best modeler out there, if you're not worried about price. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Maybe you're a quad cortex person who's ditched Fractal. Maybe you're a Helix person who's gone to Fractal. I'm sure there's people that have jumped the fence. I'm sure there's people that like elements of all of them. I still hear people say, you know, they feel like Kemper plays and feels most like an amp. So, you know, horses for first course.